Record.
You're trying to save me, stop holding your breath. And you think I'm crazy, yeah, you think I'm crazy.
I wanted the fame, but not the cover of Newsweek. Oh well, guess beggars can't be choosy. Wanted to receive attention from my music. Wanted to be left alone in public, excuse me. But wanting my cake and eat it too. And wanting it both ways. Fame made me a balloon. Cause my ego inflated when I flew, see, but it was confusing. Cause all
Yeah, that was dedicated to my man Steve. You might know him on Twitter at Sports4Steve. Huge Eminem fan. So welcome to the Thursday night daily fantasy kickoff show. We're talking about NFL tonight. Tonight is like sports overload. You've got so many games, not just the NFL game, but you've got two top 10 matchups in college football. You also have the Heat and Clippers. And Dwight Howard going against his old team in the Lakers. So it is a lot to digest, but we're going to try to do exactly that. We're going to try to take it in and then digest it and see what comes out. Grant Gurtin is joining me. Grant is the CEO of Fanium, and he is live from the Westin Hotel. And you're going to go to that college football game tonight, are you not?
Yep. Right after this show, I'm going to go watch Stanford play Oregon. I think that we can wish the best for Stanford, but it's definitely a tough matchup. I've been rooting for D'Anthony Thomas all year as a fantasy college football player. It's going to be tough and he and Mariota have done very, very good things for me. So the idea of rooting against them is going to be difficult.
So you are basically you're a Stanford fan tonight, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm going. My sister goes there, and I'm going to see her. It's kind of tough when you're doing that to not root for the home team.
No, I mean,
I didn't put any action in the Thursday Friday games tonight. Pretty much in the sole reason that I knew if I would probably pick Mariota, and it would be absolutely torturous because. I mean, it's not a great matchup for him, but that guy, if anyone's gonna have a good fantasy game, he's one of the best. He's like the best, one of the best fantasy players I've ever seen in any sport. Like, I was playing a game. I actually lost in a stat correction on DraftKings in a triple up 2 weeks ago. But Mariota, I was down by 100 points with 3 guys to go in a triple up, and almost came back within 0.5 points on Brandon Cooks, Mannion, and Mariota. And really, it's because Mariota, 55-yard run in the first play for a touchdown. I mean, you don't see that out of many quarterbacks. It's like one play, that's 10 points in the books. Guy's awesome.
Definitely, and we will talk more about that tomorrow night with Ben and myself on the college football show. So we got a lot of stuff. I mean, this week, November is just a crazy, crazy month because you have NFL, NBA, college football, and then did you see the DraftKings slate of college basketball games starting this Friday? It is like 50 games. It is like literally 50 games. I say literally. I don't really know how much, but it's the most games I've ever seen included for a daily fantasy contest.
Don't get me tempted on too much stuff. I mean, I already have enough of a slate this week in a DFS contest to go knock down.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to make my way to the Playboy Mansion as a player. But that's
you are a player, Grant. Don't let anybody tell you different. Play on, play out. We got Furious and the Funk in the house. And he said, "What's up, fellas? Dave, congrats on the NBA start. My hat's off. Impressive." Stop it. Oh, gosh.
That's a good start, though. You've been killing it in the FCK Challenge. I know you tout everyone
Not
else. Not
last night. Last night was terrible on DraftKings. My decision to go D Rose over D Lee it cost me from 3rd place to 7th place. But I'm just happy the NBA is back. NBA is, of course, it's the most exciting of the daily fantasy sports, I think. But we're not here to talk about NBA tonight. We're here to talk about the NFL. Tonight's game, Are you playing anybody in this prime time matchup with the Redskins versus the Vikings?
Oh, I think Adrian Peterson is, if he's not my top play of the week, he's up there in the top 5 to 10. The Redskins defense has been horrid all season, just really, really bad. And Adrian Peterson is in need of a massive game. I think that he played well last week, but one thing, I think that Christian Ponder being in there helps Adrian Peterson's value because you're not going to get any deep passes, which means they're going to kind of matriculate the ball down the field, which then results in a lot of goal line opportunities if they do move the ball. And I think that Adrian Peterson, the Vikings are not going to bring in Toby Gerhart. He's one running back that's going to be on the field the entire game. And I think that if you're going for a good bet, it depends on the site, but I think Adrian Peterson is a very strong play tonight against Washington. Defense has been consistently one of the worst 5 against the run this year.
I think it's site dependent. It just depends on where his salary is at. Obviously, you saw last week against the Cowboys, he had a pretty good game there by any stretch of the imagination, and his salary was pretty low. For where he's at on FanDuel, he's $9,900. I think that prices him out of the ballpark for me, especially with some of the more tempting options that they have there on FanDuel. So I will not be taking him there. Are you seeing any other sites where he might be tempting to take, though, as far as low salaries?
Well, in Star Street specifically, where people know I play a lot of action, he's not. I think that given that he's not the highest priced running back at 13-1, I think they're on a tight cap. That's a solid play. On DraftKings, he's 82, so they put him in a place where it's going to be relatively challenging to play him. But I still wouldn't get angry at someone for doing it. And then I actually don't have his price on Draft Street. So his
price on Draft Street is under $15K, which is not bad. So it places him in that same tier as some of the other guys like Forte. I do think though that there are some players out there that just have really good matchups this week, and the lineup construction this week is going to be definitely something that I'm going to be interested in see what happens tonight. You know, on FanDuel especially, you can see the percentage owned of players, and you can kind of get a sneak peek on who the public is on early before tomorrow's practice reports come out. So that's one thing that I'm going to be kind of looking at to see how people are building the lineups. Here are the storylines for me, and I'll get your feedback as far as what you think about them. You have a lot of cheap running backs. Obviously, the Thursday or the primetime games from Sunday and Monday night, FanDuel doesn't adjust there. So you've got Eddie Lacy still at that 6,800 range, which makes him just incredibly cheap. And then you also have Woodhead going against the Broncos. He's going to probably catch a lot of dump-off passes as they're going to be playing from behind, I'm guessing. And then you have Reggie Bush in a good matchup. If you're paying for a running back, you've got Rashad Jennings if you're going cheap. But for the most part, it looks like to be a cheap running back day. Here's the other storyline, is what I referenced earlier with Eddie Lacy. The FanDuel not changing the salaries on the Sunday and Monday nights means that T.Y. Hilton is still $6,000. Means that Andre Johnson is still $6,900. Those guys' prices are still the same, and I think we saw in those primetime games last Monday and Sunday that they definitely have value, and they definitely could go off. So of those guys, which one are you most on as far as the guys that played in the Sunday and Monday night games?
I gotta like Eddie Lacy a lot, obviously, at the $1,600 price point. He hasn't moved at all in the last, 3 or 4 weeks. Done the show, and I recommended him every week. The value is just really, really high. I have a hard time recommending any Packer players just because of how awful Seneca Wallace is, but at $6,800, you're getting a really, really good buy on Eddie Lacy, and knowing that he's going to get a lot of carries this week. And he somehow catches passes. I don't really get it, but he's caught passes in some games. I'm not as high. You mentioned Woodhead. I'm not as high on Woodhead at this point. I was earlier, but then Ryan Matthews has come on recently. Had a bad week last week, but still, am in the camp where if there's two of those guys and they're splitting carries and there's other guys in the range that can take you get all the carries, it's not really a hard decision for me. I don't like getting cutesy and playing guys like Woodhead. T.Y. Hilton's interesting. At $6,000, he slots in as somewhat of a no-brainer, but also is a really, really good fade candidate because even with that ridiculous week last week, he's having watched a lot of the Colts games because I'm a person that perpetually picks Andrew Luck. He's not that good. He's good, but he's not elite good, and I think that there are other guys in the range that are still better as players. And I'm always a skills over role guy. That's always one of my big mottos is going for players who are really good over the role they're in, unless the price is really, really good to make me want to, value that role. So I'm not totally convinced. I still like Kobe Fleener better. I haven't moved from my love for Kobe Fleener from last week.
Okay.
Hilton happened to be the guy who got it last week, but that doesn't mean I'm not a person who chases last week's points. That's like the biggest mistake you can make in DFS, I think, is trying to be a guy who chases last week's points. He had 3 touchdowns last week, but it's a new game. Stat lines are 0 this week. So I don't think Hilton's so much a lock. I think Lacey's more of a lock, and Andre Johnson's a good bet for continued production, I think, with Keenum. That guy's just a big dude. He still looks as athletic as he's ever looked. He's healthy again. He was hurt for a few games. Now he looks healthy. It's up and down with Andre, but I think that Andre and Lacey are the top 2 plays from those primetime games carrying over. Hilton's not a bad price. I just wouldn't get – I don't think it's as exciting as it's going to be made out to be this week.
Yeah, I mean, Hilton's at $6K. That's the only thing is that he's at $6,000. He's obviously the number 1 wide receiver regardless of where it lists him on the depth chart. So that's why I'm looking at him. So the storylines for tonight's games is are basically, are you going to play anybody tonight? Are you going to go cheap on running back on FanDuel and then spend on a guy like Peyton Manning, going up against San Diego? Are you going to try to use any of those options that he has? There's 5 scoring options. So are you rolling the dice thinking that one of those is going to get one of the 5 touchdowns that he throws? I want to go back to tonight's game real quick, and then we can move on. I want you to give me one player. If you had to choose one player to play tonight, who would it be?
It's going to be Adrian Peterson on Star Street, at least. If I'm going to FanDuel, which is where the majority of people play, I think that if I'm going to play Griffin, I'm going to play Garcon too. The price isn't great, but I think that if you're entering a Thursday GPP, the problem is that other people doing that will probably be doing the same thing, but the matchup is good for Garcon and Griffin to have a good day. I think that behind Peterson, I like Garcon and Griffin combo as very viable plays tonight.
Yeah.
So is Jordan Reed. I think Jordan Reed's a very viable play also.
Yeah, Jordan Reed is going to be the guy that I would probably feel the most confident in rostering on Draft Street and FanDuel. On Star Street, I agree that Adrian Peterson would be that guy. Now, if you're looking for one of those sexy plays, if you're filling out your Draft Street lineups and looking for a sexy play, Cordero Patterson is at $3,000 on Draft Street, and he's just a guy that is always capable of scoring a touchdown. Not saying by any stretch of imagination that he is, but for only $3K, he might be a good guy to get some salary relief there. I'm not sure if you've looked any at the Draft Street values, but there are, or the Draft Street prices, but there are some good values there. One guy that our good buddy and Fantasy Insider co-founder, Mr. Tuttle05, mentioned, Griff Whalen, got the majority of the targets instead of Brazil. And do you say Brazil? I guess it's Brazil for the Colts. Yeah. So he's definitely a guy that you might want to play. Let's talk, though, about the quarterback position. Who are you looking at for quarterback this weekend? Are you going to spend? Are you going to go cheap? Are you going back to the well for Jake Locker against the Jaguars this week?
I haven't decided yet in Locker. It was a rough weekend last weekend. I got myself in a position last weekend where I took home a satellite and got myself in that 1K PFFC qualifier, and that's my site. Anyone who watched the show knows that that's where I play the strongest. This is my best opportunity to live event this year, and Jake Locker absolutely shit the bed. The only good thing for me was that there were only 14 people in there, so I placed 10th. So I guess you could say I had a top 10 finish in the qualifier this year. But it was my worst week in Star Street Elite the whole year, and Jake Locker just 2 interceptions added insult to injury. Finally, Kendall Wright got a catch late and made it look a little bit better, but it was just a flat-out bad week for Jake Locker. I have a hard time with Locker. Some of the guys I like this week, though, I think that a guy that I haven't heard mentioned too much that I think is a really good play this week is Ben Roethlisberger against Buffalo. Buffalo allows a lot of points to quarterbacks, and he's priced reasonably well across the board. Ben also burned me in a week and 2 weeks ago, so I might have to go back to one of two guys that have been pretty atrocious. I like Russell Wilson a lot against Atlanta. They're a pretty bad defense. Wilson's been putting up steady production at quarterback, and he's been very consistent, so he hasn't made it into – he's off a lot of people's radars, I think. I haven't seen him played much, but he puts up rushing yards, so for all the 4 TD passing – for the 4-point pass and touchdown sites like FanDuel, Star Street, pretty much everywhere but Draft Street, and I think Fan Throwdown. Russell Wilson's a good play. I love Andrew Luck this week because, as I said last week, they don't have a running game. So he has to pass, and he also puts the ball. Same thing. Andrew Luck gets solid rushing production, too. And I think that, and I hate to say this, but I think just because he's white, and I think he doesn't run like a 4.3, people ignore his rushing production. But his rushing production is absolutely there. He puts about 20 rushing yards a game. I think that it's reverse racism on Luck, but I'll take it because I play him all the time. And I think that Phillip Rivers also. I think if I'm looking for a quarterback in the Denver-San Diego game, I'm much more prone to look at the Rivers-Allen combo than I am at the Manning and whoever else because they're going to play from behind. Rivers is going to have to throw. I think that Woodhead and Matthews aren't great plays this week. But look at what Romo did against Denver and think to yourself, that's Rivers' ceiling, and that's high. So you got to like him. I even think that Vincent Brown, that he might even be a reasonable. Vincent Brown is absolutely in play this week, given what's happened in past matchups for Denver.
Yeah, I think that you covered a lot of ground there. So some value plays that I would look at. Dare I say, go back to the well for Eli this week because he's definitely going to be interesting against Oakland at 6,400 on FanDuel. You have Case Keenum at 6,100, Jake Locker at 6,600. Out of those three, without any explanation, just tell me who you would play of those three.
Manning.
I'd go Manning as well. So, and on the high end, I think Peyton. This is a good week to spend on Peyton against San Diego. Even though it's on the road, he's coming off a bye, very capable of putting up 4 touchdowns and just really waxing the floor with San Diego. And I'd much rather pay for Peyton than try to guess on which one of his 5 options are going to get those targets. So that's definitely how I'm looking at it. Running back. Let's go to running back. Give me your top 3 plays for running back on the value side of kind of where you're seeing them.
I think that the best overall play for production this week, I still think is Peterson, as I mentioned earlier, but you have to pay $9,900 for him on FanDuel, which is where the majority of people play. That's obviously going to be a little bit rough. Taking value into consideration, Reggie Bush at $8,500 against the Bears defense has been just terrible. You got to like the guaranteed receptions for Bush this week. I think that if you're playing heads up, Reggie Bush is a pretty secure guy to put in your lineup. Nothing to be afraid about. I don't hate Alfred Morris tonight. $7,500. You're playing on Thursday night, giving some Thursday night love. Minnesota's run defense leaves a little bit to be desired. I think you can go there. I think that LaShawn McCoy could do well this week, although I'm really, from a spreadsheet perspective, I put LaShawn McCoy in my top 3. From a gut feeling perspective, I am not sure about you. I'm scared to death to get this guy in my lineup now. He's burned me a bunch of times this year.
Yeah, he burned me. He didn't have a terrible game last week, but when you put up over 50 points, and he doesn't have a monster game. Your star running back doesn't have a monster game. You feel a little gypped at the end. So I definitely agree that he could have a potentially good game, but Reggie Bush would be the guy that I would rather play over him and Forte. And honestly, that kind of scares me because I look at Reggie and he's been susceptible to injuries. So I think that he's a decent play. Chris Johnson is a decent play going against Jacksonville.
I'd stay away. I'd stay away from Chris Johnson still.
He's a boom or bust option. I will admit that.
He's not a heads-up guy for sure. If you're not playing a heads-up game, you don't want to play that guy. In a GPP, maybe, but they're still going to throw in Sean Green at the goal line. They did it last week. So I just think that at that price, he's a guy who, once again, if you're chasing last week's points, he looks really, really good. But how could you play Chris Johnson at 8,000 over, say, Ed Lacy at $1,600? That's what I would have a hard time with.
Yeah. No, I mean, I understand. I definitely understand that. So I don't think I would play them in a head-to-head. Again, if I don't go Bush, I'm going cheap at running back. And a guy that I failed to mention but is cheap across the sites is James from Tampa Bay. He is 4,000 on DraftKings. He is 6,000 on FanDuel. Both he and Rashad Jennings from Oakland, they both are going to get a lot of carries with being the number one starter. So I definitely think that they are, for where their price is, they're pretty good options, and it allows you a little bit of salary relief if you want to go to the wide receiver, especially on PPR sites. That you want to kind of get those big dogs in there, and I know a lot of people are expecting big games out of Dez, Demarius. So I'm curious to get your thoughts as to the wide receivers that you think might go off tonight.
Let me also follow up with, if anyone wants the psychological input, because we're not in the Friday show, the Miami Dolphins psychologically not in a great place, probably. So Mike James is a guy I like this week. I agree with you. I should have mentioned him. At receiver, I think that I kind of like A.J. Green this week. If you're looking for a guy that haven't been, I feel like he hasn't been mentioned as much. I haven't seen his name mentioned much. He's playing really, really well. If you're talking about a guy who you know is going to get targets, Marvin Jones had that 1 week, but even A.J. Green still produced in that week. I think that he's as physically talented as any receiver in the NFL. He and Dez Bryant are equally talented in my mind. Green's a little bit cheaper. I even think that Green's a little bit more of a sure bet to get targets. Bryant's got maybe a slightly better matchup, but the Ravens haven't been that good this year. So I actually expect the Bengals to have a pretty good game this week. I like Brandon Marshall to have another good week this week. He looked pretty good last week. Another guy whose name's not getting mentioned all the time, but that guy is still a target machine. He's one of the best athletes. I'm still staying away from all the Bronco guys, like I mentioned earlier. And I think that I think Antonio Brown's definitely in play this week against the Buffalo secondary. He's on target for 120 catches. And I'd say that Keenan Allen against Denver, I think, is the receiver to play. I would rate Allen above any Denver wide receiver this week. If I did rankings, Allen would be rated above all of them, in my opinion.
Yeah. Keenan Allen definitely is going to have a good game. I think that we talked about T.Y. Hilton. He's going to be an interesting play because his salary is so cheap. There's going to be a lot of – that's why I think that on FanDuel you have to go Peyton as your quarterback. You got to go Lacy as your running back. And then at wide receiver, either choose T.Y. Hilton or Golden Tate. Golden Tate is at $4,500. The minimum salary there on FanDuel is going to be the number one option for Russell Wilson. So that's why I think that those three players are the guys that you need to have in your lineup for those cash games because they're going to be heavily owned, and you don't want to miss out on that. Basically, there's going to be a lot of overlap, and you want to make sure that the other guys are who you are on. So it's that second running back, it's the second and third wide receivers, and it's your tight end who you want to play. So that's why I think those guys are definitely in play on FanDuel. I like, though, your call about Brandon Marshall. I do think that he is going to get a lot of targets. As far as Kendall Wright, we talked about him for the Titans.
Awesome.
On your site, Star Street, he's 8,900, and he's a PPR machine.
He's going to get played. I can tell you for a fact he's going to be in a lot of lineups in Star Street. He was 30-something% owned in my $1,000 qualifier last week. I can tell you I played him. That didn't work out so well. But I still – he's a guy I would go back to the well on this week against Jacksonville, not just on Star Street, but on other sites. I think that touchdown's got to be coming soon, and this could be the week where it does.
Yeah. I would agree. Calvin Johnson, if are you paying a little bit more for him rather than go cheaper on Des Bryant this week?
I have a hard time with Johnson. It's going to be a gut play on Sunday morning. Right now, my gut feeling is that he had that ridiculous game. Calvin's a guy I always like getting in my lineups, but at the same time, I feel like I'm just not convinced that he's there are people who have pointed out this week that the Johnson does not have a good history against the Bears. Not sure what that means, but it's something I keep in consideration at least. I'm not convinced he's that much better than Dez or AJ Green, and he costs more. So I have to decide if I want to pay the extra dollar for that or I want those dollars to go elsewhere and getting me upgrades at some other position. So it's going to come down to how he fits in my lineup at the end of the day. If I can play both, if playing him means I can't play both AJ Green and Brandon Marshall, or both AJ Green and Des Bryant, or Brandon Marshall and Des Bryant, or some combo, I think that the top tier receivers this week is basically, I'd say, Calvin, Marshall, Green, Bryant, and Keenan Allen, and maybe Antonio Brown's on the outside of that for me. And if I want to be able to play as many of those guys as I possibly can. So if playing Calvin means that I can't play another one, it's gonna be tough for me to get him in the line. That would be the kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I think if you're going cheap on DraftKings, another guy to kind of keep in mind, Marlon Brown at 3,000 is going to be, or Mike Brown rather, at 3,000 going against the Titans. He might be a guy that no one is going to be on one of those contrarian plays. So
I like Jacksonville this week. I don't hate that team based on some of their pricing. Like, I think Cecil Shorts is okay. Like, their plays, I know they're playing your team, but I'm just saying that those guys, they were putting up points before Blackman got there, which people might forget. Like, I had a week where I swept the board in late games playing Cecil Shorts. I had top 10 finish that week too in Elite, playing Shorts, Ace Sanders, and Henny. I mean, those guys, Henny right now in Star Street, speaking of that site, specifically $8,200. That's really, really cheap for a quarterback. I can't guarantee he won't be in my lineup. I don't know. He's not as bad as he gets made out to be. He just plays in a really, really bad team and is probably a bottom 10 quarterback, but is not the worst guy. He's better than Seneca Wallace.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't take a lot to be better than Seneca Wallace. Did you see this week they had the Uncle Rico screenshots with Seneca Wallace?
Yeah, that's what that whole video is what made it impossible for me to put Seneca Wallace in any lineup this week. There was like time where I'm thinking the guy might still be able to run and he's playing on a good team and I can get him cheap. And then I saw that video and I was like, thank you for the reminder that I cannot put this guy in a lineup if he throws like that. But that was pretty much he's not very good. I watched him in preseason also and saw the game, and
yeah.
I feel really bad for the Green Bay Packers. Like, people can't argue that they would not be better off with Vince Young in there. I know he's not as good, but as he was supposed to be. But still, Vince Young might not know plays, but he could still do a better job in there than whatever that display.
For those that are wondering about the Uncle Rico video, here it is.
It's a great video. The passes are so ugly. How is that guy on an NFL team?
Maybe it was a quick throw. Let's see it one more time.
Whoever did that was brilliant.
Oh man,
I saw it on Twitter.
It's a great screen cap. Definitely.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Someone actually saw that throw and said that looked just like Uncle Rico. So he could throw a pigskin a quarter mile. Let's talk about tight end real quick. I love the Kobe Fleener pick. I do. I love it, especially on FanDuel where his price didn't adjust. If I'm not playing Thursday night games where Jordan Reed's in play, I like Kobe Fleener. Antonio Gates, Vernon Davis.
Jordan Reed is cheap on FanDuel for what he.
Yeah, he's 5,400.
How?
I mean, he kind of disappeared in the second half. Obviously, the whole red zone thing with the Redskins last week, giving the ball to the fullback. What was his name? I don't even know his name.
Young, Daryl Young.
Daryl or Darrell Young, where he had 3 touchdowns, hadn't got the ball inside the red zone previously, and that game just goes nuts. So there's a bunch of wide receivers: Gates, Vernon Davis, Tim Wright, another guy that some people are on. Christian Hardy even had him ranked pretty high.
Oh, I've been on Tim Wright since the first game where he had 7 receptions. It's a good play. The guy's really good. I mean, if you haven't watched the Buccaneers yet, the thing what the people are doing now is they're doubling up Vincent Jackson. They really have no number 2 receiver, and Tim Wright is a receiver playing tight end. He played receiver at Rutgers. He's a very viable player. I'd expect 5 receptions from Tim Wright, 70 or 80 yards. Playing the Dolphins, too. I like all the guys against the Dolphins this week. I think that situation this isn't even psychological. That situation is a mess. There's no one who knows it. The Vegas, and we all look to Vegas for DFS advice. Vegas had the Dolphins favored by 4. Now the Buccaneers are favored by 1. So clearly Vegas thinks something's going on here. They lost a Pro Bowl guard because he wasn't able to play. That's not psychological. That's just bad for Ryan Tannehill. The Buccaneers, I think this is the week they're going to win versus the Dolphins, and their guys are all in play this week, including Timothy Wright.
Yeah. If you had to choose one, so I'm going to make you choose one, and but on DraftKings, I think Coby Fleener is the guy you want to take at only 3,700. That's just a no-brainer. If you're not taking Fleener on FanDuel, because the prices are somewhat similar, so let's just assume that you're not taking Fleener. You've got Antonio Gates at 5,600 against Denver, Vernon Davis at 6,900, so you're paying plenty more for him at home against Carolina. Tim Wright at 5,100, or Jimmy Graham all the way at 8,700. If you could choose 4 of those, or 1 out of the 4, Antonio Gates, Vernon Davis, Tim Wright, or Graham, who would it be?
It's got to be Wright, I think, in that group. Davis is rough because Carolina's pass defense is really, really good. That's one of the matchups to avoid this year. I think people haven't caught on to how good they are. Watch the games. It's a good team. That's why they're 5-3. Jimmy Graham's awesome. No problem with playing Graham. I think that's just the difference between him and Wright is so large. I think that I'm just going dollars per points per dollar. But if you have the cap space for Graham, he's a better play. So don't get me wrong there. And I think that the other guy you mentioned was at 61.
Yeah,
it's someone else.
Gates, Davis.
Gates. I still avoid Gates. Gates is a guy I just haven't played all year because I'd rather play a guy like Tim Wright in his prime than Gates, who's kind of a shell of himself. Even with the good weeks he has, he's not the Antonio Gates of the old. There's such a new wave. There's this new wave of tight ends is priced lower, and they're set for about the same production. So, yeah, I said you don't want to chase last week's points. You also don't want to chase 3 years ago's points, which I think what you're doing with Gates when you can get a guy like Wright or Fleener. It's cheaper. Fleener I'd rather play, and Jordan Reed I'd rather play. Zach Miller is also in play for Seattle. That's another guy to look if you really want to go low at $4,600.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a roster filler. If you have a lot of guys you want to play.
Well, he's also on Draft Street at under 4K, and you know that I love to punt the tight end on Draft Street. It might not have worked out. Well, actually, it did work out because I had Ertz. I just didn't have Gronk. So I had Ertz last week, and he was under 3K, and he scored a touchdown. So we were all good there. My punts on Draft Street this week are Corliss for Green Bay. You saw that Uncle Rico video. If you haven't, here it is. For Furious, he wanted to see it one more time. So there you have it. And you also have, even though he had all of his options last week, had 7 targets, 5 catches for 34 yards, and his price is dirt cheap there on Draft Street. He is 23.48. So he's under 2,500 on Draft Street. Definitely a guy that can get you salary cap relief. If you're not going him or Zach Miller, I like Zach Miller. I would be looking at either of the Rams tight ends. You got Kendricks at 2,100, and he got 3 or 4 targets. I think he got 4 targets last week. And then you have Jared Cook at 4,300.
Showed back up last week.
Yeah, it was against his old team. But, I mean, maybe it started, maybe he's going to get back into that week 1 form. Obviously been a huge disappointment weeks 2 through 9, or 2 through 8. But he was motivated last week. Let's see if they get him some more stuff this week without Bradford. Clemens there, that's one thing that they did with the Titans and Jared Cook, is that they would run special plays for him. I'm interested to see if the Rams do something similar this weekend. Defense, do you have a special defense? You are the defense whisperer after all.
I had a streak going here where I had a turnover predicted 4 weeks in a row, I think. I'm not sure if I missed or kept that going. I think that the safest defense to play this week is Tennessee's defense. I did note that I liked the Jaguars because of pricing. Just because guys are going to put up points doesn't mean the defense will also put up points. I just think that there's going to be some major garbage time action for Jacksonville, because there is garbage time action in every game, and that can lead to points. I think that I think that Tennessee is a pretty safe bet. It's funny that Buffalo is a highly projected defense this week. It just shows you how far the Pittsburgh Steelers have fallen. It's kind of a week where I don't see the Kansas City defense is off the board now. I would honestly go for whatever defense can give you the most cap relief on a given site. They're all tight on FanDuel. Maybe Cincinnati, 5,500. There's a few against Baltimore.
Maybe against Baltimore.
They get turnovers.
I've definitely been targeting offensive teams that play on the road and let's just look at the Vegas totals for defense, because sometimes it's just an absolute luck box of who is able to return a touchdown and who is not. But you have to look at opportunities, and I think the Titans definitely give you the most opportunities. The Jags only supposed to score 14 points on the road against Tennessee, and Tennessee is one of those teams where they go aggressive at turnover, so they're going to be jumping on balls. And
Vern is one of those contract guys. I love the players in their contract year because it's this amazing phenomenon. They always play better when there's a contract that's on the line. And he sees one and he sees the cash signs, and this is a bad team. This is Werner's chance to go get one of those pick sixes, I think.
So you're talking Tuttle's love language. He loves him some Alteron Werner. The other two teams, though, the Rams at the Colts, it could be. I mean, you got Zach Stacy, but obviously with a rookie quarterback on the road, you've got or a new quarterback on the road, you've got the chance for the Colts to score some points. And the Giants are dirt cheap on a few sites, and playing against the Raiders, they're a pretty high-ranked. Just looking on some season-long fantasy sites, because I always like to stream my defenses for season-long fantasy, and they are definitely a high option. I picked them up in my season-long league, so I think the Giants, if their salary is low enough, could be a team that get a turnover and don't let a lot of points be scored. I know that some people are high on Rashad Jennings. I'm not as high on Rashad Jennings because of that. I'd be more high on James than Jennings. But different people can weigh in. This, for those that are tuning in, this is fantasyinsiders.com/TV, the Insiders TV Thursday night kickoff show. I am your host, David Kitchen, a.k.a. Soccer Dave, on the show. And joined by Grant Gurtin, the CEO of Fanium, and he is about to go to the Stanford-Oregon game. Try not to be jealous. So good stuff there. let's talk about.
Yeah, one more. I got one more for you on defense. Looking through it, can you pull up that video one more time?
Gosh.
Just one more time.
All right, let's pull up the video.
Got some new viewers here too. Anyway, this might be the last time ever the Philadelphia Eagles defense is in play. You just witnessed that. I think that they're a good bet for a turnover. It's one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but they probably, I haven't even thought about it, but I just did after we watched that. We watched that video 5 times, and finally it occurred to me. I said, who's playing those guys again? And I quickly remember there's the Packers. The Eagles defense, there it is. On Draft Street, I knew it'd be cheap. $2,333.
Yeah.
It's not the worst play. That's a nice play. Seneca Wallace is going to get you interceptions. I don't think they're going to score that much, to be completely honest. He's throwing like that. Even if they bruise the ball at any Lacy, I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, no matter what Vegas says. Unless the Eagles make it a high-scoring game by brutalizing the Packers secondary.
The way you said brutalizing, that reminds me of the movie Run, Roddy, Run. I'm not sure if anybody's seen that. But when he says police brutality, it's David Cross, the guy who plays in Arrested Development. If you haven't seen it, it is a must-see. Are you ready to do a little impromptu draft right now on FanDuel?
Let's do some of this. Let's do a draft on FanDuel.
All right. So we're going to pull up the screen. I'm going to let you have first pick.
Here we go. All right. After... it's unknown. I'm going to actually. We should do this. We should do it for this time. Actually, is do one that we almost did last time. I'm just gonna go post a. I'm gonna go post a free head-to-head. Maybe you can just join it on one of the teams. That way we can track this thing. Because last time I had at first it looked like I was gonna get destroyed before that draft happened, but then I got guys like Stevie Johnson score touchdowns.
Okay. Well, let's make this a non-Thursday night game. Let's make it just for Sunday only.
Right.
So I'll let you have first pick, unless you want me to have first pick.
My computer is just botching up right now. I was trying to see it. I'm not sure if FanDuel's traffic so high, but it's not wanting me to switch the date and time.
Yeah, it was a little slow for me as well, but it's up now.
All right, I'm just gonna go enter a random head-to-head because
just open in a new tab.
I'm just gonna refresh this thing.
Refresh yourself. All right, so there are some. While you're getting that,
I've entered a Sunday game against somebody, so at least I can go fill this thing out. All right.
You don't have to press enter.
Oh no, I know. I'm just gonna put it so I can watch my lineup on here. It's easier to have my construction. I'm gonna start with Eddie Lacy. I think that he's just the best dollars per point per dollar guy on the board this week, and I've been fading him in most games aside from FanDuel, but if you price him at $1,600, he's going to be the entire offense this week, so I feel pretty comfortable going that direction.
All right, so you're going Eddie Lacy, and I will go ahead and just take the chalk and go with Peyton Manning. I think Peyton has a pretty good chance to just to do some damage. They have the highest total, of course, next to the Saints. They are at 32, and the Saints are at 29.75 at home against the Cowboys. So that'll be interesting. The next play I'm going to give myself lots of room to adjust. I'm going to go with Golden Tate.
All right. And I'm going to stay cheap at running back this week to give myself some other options. I like Mike James against Miami at $6K. I think that he's priced very, very reasonably on FanDuel still. So
all right.
I think he's going to get some receptions, and he's going to absolutely be the bell cow. So I'll take him. And are we snaking here? So I have the next pick also, I believe.
Yep.
And that will open me up for another high value guy, my boy Tim Wright. So now my cap should be pretty opened up going forward after those picks.
Yes, it shall. All right, so it's up to me. So far, we have Eddie Lacy, Mike James, and Tim Wright versus Peyton Manning and Golden Tate. I think that I know Well, I can't pick Jordan Reed there at tight end. Since you already picked tight end, I can wait there. So I will go with I'm just gonna go ahead and go with Des Bryant this week. I think that he could have a huge week, and I'm gonna need all the points that I can handle against you. So Des Bryant would be the guy that I'm going after, and then I'm going to follow that up with Reggie Bush.
Well, I couldn't have taken anyway, but that's okay. I will then. Now I've got to load up the receiver positions, like you mentioned. Going for quarterbacks would do nothing for me. Same as tight ends. I know you can't take any of them. I will go first with given my cap situation. I'm going to go with Keenan Allen, and then I'm going to go with Calvin Johnson right after. They should both fit right in together and balance each other out. With all that room, it was hard not to pay for Calvin Johnson.
For sure, and so I see your Calvin Johnson, and I will counter with T.Y. Hilton at 6,000. That leaves me, if I go kicker and defense at 5K, that leaves me 12.2 for tight end and running back. For tight end, I'm not going to take Fleener. I'm going to take Antonio Gates. I think at 5,600, he's a guy that is in line for a lot of targets if they throw the ball, which I think they will against Denver. So I'm going to take Gates, and I think it's your pick now.
It is, and I'm still taking my good old time at quarterback, so it'll be a second before I make my decision there. For my last wide receiver, the whole goal of this lineup specifically was to stack as many studs as I possibly could into this lineup. Let's see. I would have probably gone for Golden Tate at some point, but you already took it upon yourself to put him in there. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I will actually, just for the purpose of do a little optimizing, I'm going to go with Eli Manning at 6'4". I think that's a good pick. So with that in mind, that will give me, let's make sure I have the right number here. I can spend
8.7 if you go chalk on the kicker and defense.
Yes. And I will go with Brandon Marshall, which will give me a little bit of space. He was my next highest rated player behind Eli. So I have a little bit of space in kicker defense, but that was not necessarily the intention. I think the Eli Manning matchup-wise prediction per dollar is really, really strong this week on FanDuel. And then filled out, my goal in this lineup was to have real stud receivers across the board, and I was able to put 3 of those guys in there. So I feel like I'm going to give myself a good shot with them, and now I got to get these value guys at running back and quarterback to do the job for me.
Well, I am high on Danny Woodhead, so obviously I have a lot of skin in this Denver and San Diego game. But at 6,600, I think that he's a guy that I am willing to pay for. The only thing is, if I could get a guy, Pierre Thomas is a guy, if I knew Sproles wasn't playing, he'd be a guy that I would definitely be rostering at only 5,600. But we don't know, so I will be going. Danny Woodhead, and then I will follow that up with let's go. See if there are any kickers. Baronis would be the guy at 5K against Jacksonville. You're talking about an offense that he could put him out there 5 or 6 times this Sunday. So Baronis would be my guy. So that means you're up. You've got a kicker and a defense. Fun times.
Yep, I think that the right guy to spend on, if I'm going to spend on a kicker or a defense, is always the security of a lot of scoring. So I think that it's hard for me to believe that Matt Prater will not this is a heads-up game. In a heads-up game, Matt Prater is very likely to get points. So I had that cap room. I'll spend $5,400 on Matt Prater. So that leaves me with my defense. And my maximum defense would be the Colts against St. Louis. I get to play Kellen Clemens. That would be interesting. The other options here would be Buffalo against Pittsburgh. That's going against my team. Or Philadelphia against Green Bay. At the end of the day, I got to go with Indianapolis against St. Louis. The Rams, I'm not sold in their ability to score. And it is still Kellen Clemens, who I'm not sure is actually playing. I was going to mention the show. Kellen Clemens is actually playing a lot better than everyone probably expected Kellen Clemens to play. But he's still not a premier quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. So, actually, let me think about this really quickly. Is that really what I want to go? Yeah, I think that I will indeed stick with the Indianapolis Colts defense.
It's a good spot.
I'm tempted by Philadelphia still, as I mentioned earlier, but I think that Eddie Lacy, Green Bay still has a lot of weapons despite their horrendous quarterback. So
I'll go Detroit at Chicago, and that kind of counters your Brandon Marshall play. So that's there you go. Those are the two lineups. So your lineup consists of Manning, Lacy, James, Keenan Allen, Calvin Johnson, Brandon Marshall, Tim Wright, Prater, and the Colts. And mine consists of Manning, Bush, Woodhead, Tate, Bryant, T.Y. Hilton, Gates, Baronis, and the Lions. I think that both of those are pretty fair lineups. It's going to be interesting. Shoot me that head-to-head, and we'll see if we can get that in.
I'm actually going to put that on my calendar because the site's a little bit slowish.
We'll do it this weekend.
Yeah, so it's only a Sunday game, so I have let me go and quickly throw up on. I'm just going to throw it in my calendar for tomorrow to remind to send a lot of things. I'll be jumping right to the Stanford game in the season.
Yeah, are you going to be tailgating?
I am not because I don't really have time.
No Tecate?
Nope. If anything, it'll be the Clearly Kombucha because I'm going to the game with the founder of Clearly Kombucha. So I saw he had a whole tank, he had a whole case, a cooler of kombucha, which I do. If you are in an area with Clearly Kombucha at Vaughn's, Ralph's, Fresh Market, I'm just saying some of the places that it's in, I would go and buy it. It's good. We had this conversation on our Friday show 2 weeks ago. It tastes better than the majority of kombucha that you've probably drank, so I'm giving them a free ad spot.
I need to show you the mushroom that I had. They call it the Mama, the SCOBY, the SCOBY, that I had in the kombucha that I was brewing. It looks absolutely disgusting, and then you actually have to pour it in there, but it actually tastes pretty good because you have to put so much sugar in there. Anyways, too much talk about kombucha. Grant, I appreciate you filling in for the normal guy, Drew Dinkmeyer. You won't be with us tomorrow, and you will be sorely missed, but we'll bust open an imaginary Tecate for you. So tell people where they can find you as far as on the interwebs.
At Grant Gurtin on Twitter. Also, if you follow my app at Fanium Fantasy FB, you can go download that. There's still a little bit of time to go and play the game. If you follow Crazy Gaby on Twitter, he's been posting his Fanium picks recently. So shout out to him for doing it. You can still get in leagues. So it isn't too late, but I can say that for viewers of this show, we have a much more exciting game that you'll probably be more interested in for you coming soon. Started development on it 2 weeks ago, and the front end was beginning to be coded yesterday. So I could say that's getting there. It's definitely, those guys move fast. They'll be available relatively soon.
Very nice. Well, can't wait to see what that comes out with. If it's anything like Fanium, we're in a good, we'll be in for a treat. So with that, guys, we're going to sign off. Do work on your Thursday night lineups and be a monster, as Eminem likes to say.
Cause I think I'm getting so huge, I need a shrink. I'm beginning to lose sleep. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, going cuckoo and kooky is cool key. But I'm actually weirder than you think. Cause
I'm friends with the monster that's under my bed. Get along with the voices inside of my head. You're trying to save me, stop holding your breath.
My stomach's so
You think I'm crazy.